Former governor of South Carolina, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and now a 2024 Republican presidential candidate, Nikki Haley, joins me. Good evening.
Great to be with you, Greta. Thank you.
It's great to have you. And the world, of course, is quite a tinderbox these days. So I want to, jump right into. Let me first start with Iran. If you become president of the United States, what are you going to do about Iran? It is so close now to having a nuclear weapon. And the options are Israel has said that they will not permit it. The U.S. has said it will not permit it. And now we have the situation where they're so close. So tell me, what would you do as president of the United States?
You know, we have to have some deterrence, and the only way you have deterrence is through strong leadership by the United States. If you look at this recent agreement that was brokered by China, it really was a devastating blow to the United States because it showed that the Arab countries couldn't count on us to help them with Iran anymore. And so we really have a lot of work to do, whether it's going and strengthening those Arab ties that we have, bringing in Israel and making sure we all work together to figure out how we stop Iran. But the idea that China is going forward on this, that Iran is working with Russia when they deal with Ukraine, and that they continue to build up their productivity, it's a problem. But the only way to deal with this is through American strength.
All right, American strength, what do you mean, though? Because now we've got the situation where Saudi Arabia has diplomatic relations with Iran, brokered by Communist China. And so it's hard to count on Saudi Arabia to help us very much. Would you have military action in Iran to make sure that they don't have a nuclear weapon? Would that be something you consider?
Well, you have to look at where we started. None of this would have happened if we wouldn't have had the debacle in Afghanistan, right? So it showed incredible amounts of weakness. And since then, you saw Biden falling all over himself to get back into the Iran deal, which said so much. Then the Americans look to the sky and they see a Chinese spy balloon looking back at them. So over and over again, we continue to show weakness. What we have to do is be strong. That means make sure we're strong in Ukraine. The idea that this war is happening with Ukraine and Russia, it doesn't mean that it's about Ukraine. This is a war for freedom, and it's one that we have to win. And China and Russia are waiting to see what we do with that. You see that Russia just tried to shoot down one of our drones yesterday. That was to try and keep us from having any surveillance over Ukraine. What we need to do is make sure that we put 2 drones back up there, that we put our naval fleet back into the Black Sea, that we go and let Russia know we're not going to put up with that. When you do things like that, that's what causes deterrence for everyone. And if Ukraine wins, which if Biden would have acted sooner, we would have been a much different place. If Ukraine wins, this sends a signal to China, it sends a signal to Russia, it sends a signal to Iran, it sends a signal to North Korea. And so we need to go and get with our allies and make sure that we're doing everything we can to let them know there are consequences. And when countries know their consequences, they get back in line.
But the problem is that it may be that what you're suggesting would protect Iran from using a nuclear weapon, but having one is very different. And we see even North Korea using a nuclear weapon as a deterrence. We've been afraid to do certain things vis-a-vis Russia because it's armed with nuclear weapons. We're really at that line where the world has to admit is that we are maybe 12 days out almost because they're going to have the sufficient purity enrichment of uranium to make that bomb. I mean, that's not using it, but that's having it, which changes the whole dynamics of the Middle East, just having it.
Well, it changes the dynamics when you've got a weak president. If you go back to the Trump administration, you didn't see Iran doing anything. We put sanctions on Iran. Biden has lifted the sanctions on Iran. There's nothing stronger than to go and put economic sanctions to let them know that we're going to cut off the pipe. That's the thing that we could have done with China as well. There are things that could be done, and Biden has done none of that. The number one thing we can do is make sure that countries know that if we say we're going to do something, we mean it. Obama missed that with Crimea. Biden has missed that on multiple fronts. They showed a national embarrassment in the fall of Afghanistan. You go and see how they're handling China. I mean, look at the fact that China is building up their military, and we're taking gender pronoun classes. China is stealing intellectual property. They just built their 5th generation fighter jet. How did they do it? By stealing our intellectual property to get it. They're buying 380,000 acres of U.S. soil, and we're allowing them to do it. And that's most recently near Grand Forks Air Force Base near North Dakota, where our most sensitive drone technology is. And on top of all of that, what did the United States do? last year gave $46 billion in military aid. And who did we give it to? Pakistan, that's tied to China, that used to harbor terrorists that would kill our soldiers. Iraq, that's holding hands with Iran, that's funneling those to a regime that says death to America. Belarus, who's holding hands with Russia. China. Why are we giving money to China? That makes us look so weak.
Would you
Cuba,
talk
that we
to
said
Putin?
was a communist state.
When you talk to Putin,
the idea that we've done that,
we
should have the backs of our allies, but we should not be paying money to countries that hate America.
All right, we are not talking to Putin, and I don't think that you necessarily show weakness when you talk to an opponent. And so I see no effort by this administration at least to talk to our people who are, for all intents and purposes, our enemies. Would you talk to Putin? I'm not saying you agree with him. I'm not saying you'd give in to him, but would you talk to him?
You absolutely talk to your enemies because you have to tell them what we expect of them. And, that's like what I did at the United Nations. We told them what the U.S. was for, what the U.S. was against, what we expected from them. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. That's what Biden needs to be doing. Biden should have, instead of calling Saudi Arabia a pariah state, he walked them into the hands of China. That's not what he should have done. He should have realized that the Crown Prince is going to outlast every leader. You have to go and have these relationships. You've got to have that communication that's clear, concise, and lets them know what the U.S. expects. The entire world is looking at us and wondering if our time is over. Our time's not passed. It's just our politicians' times have passed.
Ambassador Nikki Haley, thank you very much. I do hope you come back as we march on to November 2024, and good luck.
Thanks so much, Greta. Thanks for having me on.
The Republican field